Fantastic. Let's do this thing. Hello and welcome to the Good Friends of Jackson Elias, a regular podcast about Call of Cthulhu.
Actual play podcasts.
And horror gaming in general.
I'm Scott Dorward.
I'm Zach Reeves.
And I'm Matt Sanderson.
And this episode, we're going to be discussing why learning how to roleplay from actual play podcasts might not be the best idea. But before we get into all that cautionary stuff, Zach, for anyone who hasn't already encountered your work or heard the previous appearances you've had on The Good Friends, what should they know about you? Yeah, I mean, why? Yeah, absolutely, why?
What's up? I'm Zach. I produce Pretending to Be People, which is an actual play podcast where we play our version of Delta Green. We've done 2 seasons. Season 1 was 113 episodes long. Season 2 is 95 episodes long. Those are both fully wrapped, and we've got a bunch of fun one-shots that you can listen to with guest players like Beth May from Dungeons and Daddies, Ross Bryant from Push the Roll coming soon, Jared Logan from Glass Cannon, and of course, guest GMs and guest players like Scott Dorward, who not only came on and ran some one-shots for us, but also has joined on a lot of season 2 as one of our PC's moms.
As I said before, the role I was born to play.
And so, yeah, you can find our podcast anywhere that you listen to the podcasts.
Oh, fantastic. Well, before we jump into the main discussion, for everyone watching us live, this is obviously a live stream. We'll be putting this up on YouTube after it's done, so you can watch it there. But we'll also be putting out an edited version on the podcast feed sometime around the end of July. Because this is live, and we possibly have some people watching it live, then if you are, we will be taking questions. We won't address any of them probably for about the first hour of the recording, but as we start getting towards the end, then we'll delve into any questions that you've sent our way, and we'll try to address some of them. But shall we jump into the main topic? Matt, do you want to lead us in?
Indeed, yeah. Our main topic today, why you shouldn't learn to roleplay from actual plays. You know, with a non-biased statement like that, you wonder where our stance is going to fall on this. Just saying. Actual play podcasts and streams have grown in popularity massively over the last 20 years, redefining and dominating the hobby. They play a huge role in bringing people into role-playing games, and possibly an even larger one in teaching new players how they work. But, that's a big but, is this always a good thing? What are the advantages and possible pitfalls of learning from APs, and what other approaches might we recommend?
Now, I will admit that when I suggested this as a title for the episode, there was a bit of mischief about it. I don't entirely hold that learning to roleplay, and particularly learning to GM from actual plays, is a bad thing. But on the other hand, I don't entirely think it's a good thing, and perhaps we'll delve into some of the reasons for that as we go on. But before we get anywhere near that, what I wanted to start off with was just talking to the two of you about how you learned to roleplay in the first place, because I know Matt and I got into this hobby before actual plays were really a thing. So, you know, this form of learning, of encountering role playing, wasn't really an option for us. But how about you, Zach?
Oh, I absolutely got into role-playing because of actual play podcasts. 100%. So I was listening to podcasts while I worked a landscaping job and a maintenance job, and I was listening for like 9 hours a day. And so I dove in with 2 feet after I heard they were playing like Dungeons and Dragons, but not normal Dungeons and Dragons, just like a half-assed 15-minute role play of a scene at the end of live episodes of Harmontown, which was Dan Harmon's podcast, which I had to eventually stop listening to for my mental health. But while it introduced me to D&D essentially, and that led me to listen to Nerd Poker, which was awesome. That whole first season is so rad, which led me to the Adventure Zone and the Glass Cannon podcast. And then as I was listening to those, I was like, okay, this is all cool, but I don't really give a fuck about D&D or Pathfinder. I want to play something that is more up my alley. And around that time, a friend invited me to play Delta Green, and it was a one-shot. It started at like 11 p.m. when we made characters. I've told this story before, I think even on the last time I was on, but like 5 a.m. came around, and my now wife was like, hey, bud, where you at? And I was like, I am in a sewage like container underground, and my partner just fired his gun, and I can't hear a blasted thing because my ears are ringing, and I'm freaking the fuck out because there's something in the darkness. And I was hooked immediately, and I started running my own games. I ran 3 groups simultaneously starting like 2 weeks later for a few months before they fell off for reasons that we will discuss later in this episode. But as soon as I got into it, I went to Reddit and read every single top post on r/Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green, D&D, RPG. Like, I just went through all of them as I started listening to the good friends of Jackson Elias, so it feels weird to be here now, and listening to, who's the one that Dro Trier runs? What's that?
How We Roll.
How We Roll. That was a huge inspiration to, like, how I ran games, and like made me a better GM immediately by listening to him and literally stealing ideas from things that he was doing. And that's what brought me here today.
Oh, fantastic. So before you started running your own horror actual play, had you listened to, I mean, you were talking about listening to D&D podcasts. Had you listened to any horror podcasts before you started?
I listened to every single Delta Green game that was recorded and put on the internet before we started pretending to be people. And I listened to most of the Call of Cthulhu that was out there, and watched Into the Darkness and dove into all of it. Like, anything on YouTube, anything on podcasts, I was all in. I wanted to like suck in as much as I possibly could, because I came from a place of like being a musician growing up in the church. You learn to play music, you're on, so like I wanted to make music until the day I role played for the first time, and then I was like, I'm fully in on this, and I turned all my attention to it. And when I was trying to be a musician, I was listening to music constantly and breaking down the chord structure and the changes they were doing and the melodies that they were working against the chord structure. And so I wanted to kind of take the same analytical approach to role playing.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, that is so profoundly different from my own experience. But Matt, we've talked before about how you got into role playing in the first place, but I guess this is a subtly different question, which is what did you draw upon to actually kind of learn the craft of both being a player and being a GM?
Well, I don't think I've learned the first one at all. I think I'm a much better GM than I am a player. I tend to be that guy, in inverted commas, TM at the table when it comes to being a player. But yeah, as a GM, I think the only real way I can think of that I started out was that I had a group of players that were playing in the same live action Vampire Masquerade game that I initially started playing in. Various people that I had kind of recruited by going, hey, there's this amazing thing, come and join in. And then almost not sideswiping them off, but saying, hey, if you like this, we can do the tabletop version as well. And invited folks round to my house. I think we ran a game once a week for a while. But yeah, it was just a case of throwing myself into it, feet first, thinking, well, I quite like the playing side, but let's see what it's like on the other side of the screen. And thankfully, with a hell of a lot less organisation that's required to run a live action game, because that's effectively a second bloody job with the amount of effort that goes into doing that. So the tabletop side was infinitely more preferable in terms of the workload. But yeah, it's essentially just jump in and doing it. I don't think I had any real resources to draw upon at that point, because this is going back to the dim and distant time of year 2000. Because I started, my first game was about 2 weeks before my first GCSE exam, when I was slowly losing sanity points through failing all those rolls, one revision session after another. So it's been a while now.
I mean, there were resources on the internet for role playing around that time. RPGNet has certainly been around for that long, and there were. I think the Forge was around then, and there were definitely others. But
So you weren't looking
perhaps
hard
they weren't
enough,
quite
Matt.
as prevalent.
Probably at that point, I'm not sure if we had an internet connection at home, because I remember my dad was incredible. He still is incredibly penny pinching. So I had to convince him, berate him to finally get a solid internet connection to be connected to the world. But also the limit of my sites. My favourite bar consisted of a handful of sites. Like, here's the forum for the LARP we're playing. Here's your email. Yep, that's it.
Right.
So yeah, I just didn't wander around on the net because I wasn't au fait with it. I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And not much has changed.
I was playing Carmen Sandiego's Click and Point adventure game, and my mom was yelling at me that she wanted to make a phone call, and so I needed to get off the computer.
Oh God, this is making me feel old.
Well, I was in third grade, so I was doing the best I could. I wasn't into role playing yet, but
yeah, I learned how to role play before the public internet was a thing, long before then. And when there weren't things like actual play podcasts or forums or anything like that, I learned how to role play, I think, the way that most people did around that time, which was a combination of kind of reading the games, and there were always sections on how to, what is a role-playing game, how to role play in all those early books. And perhaps those aren't quite as important now because, thanks to things like actual plays, it's less of a mystery to new players. But back when I started, that was essential. And the other way was just simply by playing with people who knew how the games worked, and just jumping in with those, and then by doing it. And I guess this is why I have some misgivings about the approach that you talk about there, Zach. And I'm not saying that I disagree with the approach you took, or I think there's anything wrong with it. It's just that wouldn't have suited me at all, and I would have found it absolutely paralyzing to take that approach. If I think about how I started, I played D&D for the first time at school when I was about 17, and really enjoyed the experience of being a player, and almost immediately went out and bought my first RPG, which was the box set of Traveller, and decided to run that. And my second role-playing experience was running one of the Traveller modules. My third experience was improvising a Traveller game. And so I started out from the point of view of perhaps not knowing how little I knew about it, and basically learning by doing, and learning by making a lot of mistakes, learning by getting it horribly wrong, and finding out what worked and what didn't. And maybe it is just down to the way my brain works, but I would have found it, as I said, paralyzing, really intimidating to look at all the information that's out there. Here are all these people who are really good at role playing. This is how they do it. Here's lots of advice on forums and on social media. This is what you should be doing. I think if I'd read all that, I would never have had the courage to run that first game so quickly, maybe not even at all.
Ego.
Helped. But because, well, it wasn't even ego. It was just ignorance. It was,
Oh no, I'm saying
was,
for me, it was ego.
Oh,
that helped.
oh, I see. Right. Yeah, yeah.
No, but for real, I love doing research and deep diving on a subject and learning as much
Yeah,
as I can and reading about it. And I had just dropped out of college, so I was ready to have something else to read.
yeah. No, no. I mean, different people. I mean, this is a big thing that I think I want to get to in this episode, which is that people learn things in different ways.
Mm.
No one approach is going to be right for everyone. I mean, I possibly told this story in the podcast before, and apologies if I'm being an old fart and repeating myself, but I many years ago when I started out writing stuff, I began by writing fiction rather than RPGs. And I mean, I had a few stories published, but I was never very good at it. And I decided I was going to try tackling longer stuff. And I read this book by the English novelist John Braine called Writing a Novel, which was about his experiences of being a novelist, how he started out, if I remember correctly, he'd been a football player and he'd broken his leg and he'd been laid up in bed. I mean, this was like the 1940s. So, the way broken bones were treated was very different. So he was like in bed for something like 6 weeks with a broken leg. And he got bored, so he started deciding that, he'd try writing a novel. And so he outlined his process of doing so in this book. And I read this, I must have been like 18 when I read it, and I thought, oh, this is how you write a novel. No, and it took me way too long to realize, and some really disastrous attempts on my part to realize, no, this is how John Braine wrote a novel.
Yes.
This is not how Scott Dorward can write a fucking thing.
I actually just over spring break, Taylor and I, my wife and I, went to New Zealand for over her
Oh,
spring break, and we had an absolutely incredible time. And Taylor got a second and third job to make it happen. But we went over there, and I was reading George Orwell's On Writing Well, a
oh
little
yeah,
essay. Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic essay.
Oh, I love that. I
And
love that
then
essay.
it's fantastic. And at the beginning, he talks about how, he believes in allegory. He thinks that
Mm,
allegory and a direct representation of what you're seeing in the world being shown on your page is something that you should strive for, at least that he was striving for. He was,
yeah,
reading newspaper articles and working, as a journalist at the time,
yeah.
and like bringing in all of his real world experience to what he was writing, and that's how he could connect with the material. And then when
Mm,
we got to New Zealand, we rented a camper van and drove around the South Island, and it was absolutely stunning and beautiful. And of course we listened to the audiobook for the Fellowship of the Ring while we were driving around New Zealand because we're nerds, and it was awesome. And at the beginning, Tolkien goes on this. I mean, the foreword has this whole thing where he writes about how allegory is the worst thing that can happen in literature. And I had just read the bit in On Writing Well like 3 days
yeah.
before. And so it parallels, I mean, exactly what you're saying. Like the same thing that works for one person doesn't work for everybody. And that's obvious to us who are looking around.
Yeah, and this fundamentally is my difficulty with the idea of learning to play from actual plays. I'm not going to treat actual plays as a monolith because they're not, and there are plenty of different ones around.
Mm.
But I think there's a culture that's built up around learning how to role play online, partly from actual plays and partly from forum posts, where there are lots of people who believe that they have like the one true way to do this. And the thing I always worry about is new GMs and new players coming across this, looking at this, getting advice that they think is objective truth that does
Mm.
not suit them at all, and getting put off the hobby or having a really terrible experience. And yeah, yeah, this whole episode was inspired by just wanting to discuss perhaps some caution in using any of these sources as a substitute for just doing it yourself.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, though I believe there's even a word for it, right? They call it the Matt Mercer effect on the internet.
Yeah, yeah. That's not a phrase I've heard for a while, but
Yeah, but there
yeah,
for a while it was brought up a whole lot.
yeah. I mean, the Matt Mercer effect, for anyone who hasn't gathered the term, is basically, Matt Mercer at the time was the DM on Critical Role, and I mean, I think he'll go back to that at some stage, but it's Brendan Lee Mulligan at the moment, I believe. But Critical Role was like the big D&D actual play at the time. It's still huge, but there are more contenders now. And the cast on it is entirely professional actors, and very high production values, very carefully edited, very carefully scripted and set up ahead of time. Perhaps, I mean, I've never seen an episode of it, so I can't actually speak to that, but I understand, very polished, very watchable, but
I watched about an
probably.
hour for the very first time to prepare for
Oh,
this.
what did you make of it?
I like listening to actual plays, is what I
Mm,
remembered. I don't understand watching them. I think
mm.
I could easily game with my players with my eyes closed around the table now that we do a podcast. Before, we did lots of visual gags and stuff before we were recording, but I just love the being in it and being immersed audially. And if I'm watching
Mm.
people ribbing each other and making little, I don't know, it's something about watching them made it weird for me. I was like, I shouldn't be allowed to do this.
Well, and also, what kind of weirdo would watch a gaming stream of?
But yeah, they're all extremely talented, like
Yeah,
improvisers and voice actors, and that became very clear very quickly. And like they're just jumping into improv scenes that seem to get to emotional stakes very quickly, and they're all
yeah,
in on the plan, like they're all in on the storytelling together because they've been hanging out. I think they're friends, like out of the game,
mhm,
and so they understand what each other's like predilections are for what they enjoy in storytelling and how to make that happen, like setting up other players to have a cool moment and stuff like that. And they're just very skilled at that, whether naturally or built up over years of doing it professionally.
yeah. I mean, just as an aside, there, what you were talking about with jumping into those improv scenes, I think it's perhaps easy to think if you're watching these things that some of those are prepared, and maybe a few of them are. Maybe some podcasts do script or at least lightly prepare stuff like that, but having played with some professional improvisers now, I am beginning to realize just how fucking good some people are at this stuff. We did an episode of Push the Roll a little while back, which it has gone out under the title Side Effects May Include. And we had Colton Dunn on as the guest on that episode. And he and Ross have done some improv together before. And I mean, they're both really skilled actors and improvisers. And at some point, I mean, the whole thing takes place in a sleep clinic. And at some point, I described my character as struggling to get to sleep and lying there listening to a podcast to try to take his mind off things. And so Ross
And
says,
they
"Oh,
did a podcast.
that's right. Yeah, Ross says, "Oh, what kind of podcast are you listening to?" And so they just improvise like 2 minutes. This really kind of broish, kind of men's
Manosphere.
health podcast. No,
Oh
no, it was a
yeah.
men's health podcast, and it was just so pitch perfect. And it happened, just within seconds. They just jumped straight into it, and it was like watching magic.
Absolutely. Yeah. I got to see Ross perform live recently, and it is magic. It's a magic trick what he does. It's crazy.
Yeah,
And that's why I think the first thing that I wrote down in my notes for this is expectations,
yeah,
because that's the most important thing about what we're talking about in this episode, in my opinion, is because the Matt Mercer effect comes in when people expect their new GM to be Matt Mercer and are somehow disappointed when they're not. Like,
yeah.
it's, I know it's crazy. And it's like, also, if you expect your DM to be Matt Mercer. You need to be Sam. What's his face? You know, you need to be the player that has the agency in the story that's taking them somewhere and is impeded by the story that's being told, and they have this crossroads before they eventually have to choose the right option. You know, like there are things that people do at actual play tables because they've been doing it for so long, or even tables that aren't recorded. Some of the best games being played in the world are not being recorded, and it's because their players are all on the same page with their expectations, and typically their goal is to be immersed in the story and stay there.
Yeah. Matt, do you? I'm guessing I know the answer to this already, but do you ever listen to or watch actual plays?
Honestly, not that much these days. I used to.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
I used to have them playing when I'd be working from home.
Okay.
So
Right.
I find that I can listen to something if I'm working predominantly with numbers, but the minute I have to start concentrating on writing an argument or constructing a sentence, etc., then that's the point where I have to switch over to music. I have to have something that's not verbal going on in my ears. So yeah, I used to listen to quite a few,
Right.
predominantly Into the Darkness, because that's the main group that I'm associated with. But there was a few others here and there. But no, since my dear wife introduced me to the fact that I can listen to audiobooks and suddenly go, hey, this library around me, I can now actually start to digest and get through. That's eaten all of my media consumption time. I hardly watch TV. I just continually chew through audiobooks these days.
Okay. So, with the actual plays that you did listen to before you switched to audiobooks, did you find yourself picking up any tips or tricks? Did you find yourself kind of mining them for inspiration on how to develop yourself as a role player, or were they just purely like background entertainment?
I'd say a good 80% of background entertainment, but occasionally there were times when something would come up that I could think, oh, I can use that when I run games myself online. Just some little tricks, like for instance, asking for. I think this was actually in the very first long campaign that I ran online, for asking for a roll, just saying player one, make a percentile roll, player two, you're making a percentile roll, just in response to actions that they were doing. So they didn't necessarily know what was going on. But then because I had their sheets in front of me, I could then work out what the results were for player A that sent me a sneaky note saying, hey, I'm trying to do this stealthy thing, is rolling their stealth versus the other player who's rolling their spot hidden. But of course, because they're not signposted of what they're rolling, that the players themselves, at least the player on the receiving end of said sneaky shit, didn't know what was happening to them until they passed the roll and then realized, oh, you're being a dick over there, aren't you? Yep, he is. So so yeah, just those little things. But again, very much that's tied to that particular medium of play. It's more it's a different beast entirely compared to running stuff at the table. So I would only really get out of it things that I could use inside that context.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think we'll dig into that a bit more in a moment. From my own point of view, I feel really guilty about this. I mean, this feels like a big confession, but I don't listen to gaming podcasts at all. I just don't. Uh, I, I, I feel really bad about it. But particularly given the number of friends I've got who are podcasters who have got excellent podcasts, but I just I find them very difficult to listen to for a variety of reasons. One is, I guess, because I'm so heavily involved with producing podcasts that I find it difficult to engage with them for entertainment, if that makes sense. I think if you're working within a particular field, if you're doing it professionally or semi-professionally, you can perhaps listen to or watch something and pick it apart and see what you can learn from the production side of things and so on, but I think it's difficult to approach it purely as entertainment.
You've seen how
um
the sausage is made too much. That's what you're saying.
well, it's more a question of, I want to get in there and change the sausage's recipe as I'm eating the sausage.
And I'm just taking notes on the sausage. I'm just checking out that sausage for what's in it, how it was put together, what I can steal from the sausage to make my sausage better.
Chili,
Yeah.
always a good start.
No, I actually listen to very few podcasts in general, and all the ones that I do are just comedy podcasts. I really, I keep telling myself I need to listen to more gaming podcasts. And one day maybe I will, but I just find it difficult. And I mean, part of it is also that it just feels like a busman's holiday. And yeah, it's a horrible thing to admit. I feel guilty. I feel bad.
I mean, it's not like you have your own actual play podcast and don't listen to other actual play podcasts. That'd be crazy.
I mean, I don't have my own actual play podcast, but I do appear regularly on about a half dozen of the fuckers.
Well, for those of you who aren't like Scott, you can check Scott out on Pretending to Be People.
Oh, that's all right. Make me feel even more guilty, Zach. Thanks. Cheers. Yeah.
He hasn't heard it, but you're going to love it.
So, are there any particular things that you think differentiate actual plays from home games? Anything?
Editing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big one. That's the big one.
Real life does not have Adobe fucking Premiere running in the background for you to just suddenly cut out all the shit that you got wrong the first time round.
Yeah. I mean, that is. There are obviously some streams and a few podcasts that are very lightly edited, or maybe even not edited at all. And I do remember I'm not saying I've never listened to actual play podcasts. There was one I listened to a few times where they didn't edit it at all, and you could hear all the connection problems that they had joining the call. You could hear the 5 minute silence when they went for a piss, and then at the end you could hear them organising the next session. And
that's kind of cozy.
It is, yeah. I mean, if you really want to see the raw product, there are some out there.
And that is the interesting thing about this topic, because like you said earlier, actual plays are vast and myriad different approaches. So like there are those actual plays who don't edit out anything or just have one mic sitting in the middle of the table, and there are actual plays like mine where I edit each episode for roughly 12 hours before it goes out. So it's a little there are differences.
There are easier ways to earn a straitjacket, just saying.
I don't think you know how much I like it.
I mean, I would comment on that, but I'm just as bad as you.
Put me in a straitjacket, Matt.
Yeah, but there is editing, and there's editing as well, because I mean, a lot of the editing that goes into actual play podcasts is cosmetic stuff. It's removing, say flubs, or when people retake sections, or spreading out crosstalk. Crosstalk is the big one. Crosstalk, when it happens in an actual play podcast, is absolutely maddening, because particularly if you're all recording remotely, there will be times when something big happens and everyone just jumps in and starts talking. And so you want to get in there. This is why multi-track recording for a podcast is essential, because you want to get in there, split all that up, and make sure that everyone can hear all the bits that work. And it's other things like perhaps quieting some of the louder bits, particularly laughter, so that it doesn't drown out everything else. All these little things that take it from being a raucous noise to something that is pleasing on the ears. And so I mean, that's all the cosmetic stuff, which I mean, doesn't differentiate it necessarily from a home game. But then you have the big stuff. You have, this whole section that we just played, that didn't go anywhere, did it? Let's can that, throw it out. And I mean, I know Zach, both you and I have been in this position in different ways. I know, for example, I hope this isn't giving away a secret that, we did re-record a big bunch of stuff for season 2 of Pretending to Be People because you wanted it to go a different way.
It,
Um,
it actually
and
all came out in the wash. I know you don't listen to the
oh
show,
wow,
Scott, but it was all
no, of course I
edited
fucking don't.
together in such a way that it all
Oh,
became part of the
right.
story.
Oh yeah, of course. That's right. Sorry, I do remember because we did cover this in character that it was sort of a not quite a delusion, but like an alternate reality or something like that. And then yeah, yes, I
Yep.
do remember. Yeah, but I mean, but a couple of times on How We Roll with the Two-Headed Serpent, we had a couple of sessions where things happened. In one case, it was, someone being the typical playful murder hobo type and doing a couple of, incredibly violent things because they were funny in the game that I realized would probably make a large chunk of the rest of the campaign effectively unplayable. And so I did say to him after we got to that bit, I am happy to leave this in. I'm happy to go in that direction, but here are going to be the consequences. If you prefer, we can re-record that bit and take things in a different direction, and then that's going to lead to potentially more interesting stuff for the listeners to listen to down the line. But it's your call, and we went for the latter option. And
I
there was
listened to Dungeons and Daddies, which is a big
mm,
one, and they have talked about in their like Patreon post episode chats that they will go back and re-record whole sections
yeah.
often, and like more often than I expected listening to the show. But at the end of the show, I mean, I think they make something crazy, like wild amounts of money. And so they have
Mm,
3 editors listed, I think, at the end of the show. Cause I think someone does like a pass and then someone adds music and then sound effects or something. I don't know how it works, but they've got a whole operation going on over there to make it sound like it's smooth.
mm,
And they're extremely talented players and GMs over there, but for the listening audience, making it as seamless as possible. The big thing that I do, which Scott has seen me do a few times at this point, is if there's like a big crit or something, I might be like, okay, we're going to take a break
yes.
so that I can go to the bathroom. And that comes from my days of before we recorded being like, I got to pee. So I can think about what the fuck we're going to do next based on this roll.
Yeah, I take a slightly different approach, which is when something like that happens, I will just say the first thing that comes into my head. I'll just roll with it and I'll just kind of throw out mad shit. And if it doesn't work, then that gets cut out. But I think I'm just constitutionally unsuited to stopping and thinking about what I'm about to say.
I'm constitutionally unsuited for being put on the spot and have to piss.
Well, I think the podcasting world then thanks your bladder, Zach.
Oh, me too. Yeah, we're all on the same team.
Wait, how about you, Matt? I mean, when you're running stuff into the darkness, I get the impression. I mean, I've only seen a few of them, so apologies if this is something that's more obvious in other episodes. But I get the impression that they're very lightly edited.
Yeah, pretty much the only thing that really would get cut is like a bio break if we go for a particularly
Mm,
long, like 4 hour session. We normally call it about 2 hours. Quickly run to the loo, come back again, grab drinks, the normal stuff, because no one needs to sit and hear that. Although sometimes Tom does forget where he's made a note of those time signatures, so there is those few episodes where they do creep in, and you get some of the behind the scenes chit chat that happens while the camera's still on. But yeah, otherwise it's only really technical gaffes. Like if there's problems with someone's connections dropped, and then it'll be right, we'll wait for
mm,
them to reconnect. Right, they've appeared. Right, slice out that bit, and then kind of maybe
yeah.
redo the last bit of dialogue so that that makes it editing it back in easier. But it's just taking out all that unnecessary fluff for technical problems or
Mm,
breaks. I think the only time we've ever done something that was a bit more scripted was, which again came out of a technical problem, was where we had episodes where Tom's save mechanism didn't work, so we lost whole episodes. But when we were doing them as part of a series, like the one I'm thinking of in particular was Burning Stars, which, of course, with the typical polyhedral gods being their normal scornful way towards me, had to happen on the episode we had the big fucking reveal in that scenario. So there's everyone around the table, around the screen at the end of that episode going, "What the hell?" And their reactions were glorious. Then we had to get forward to the next week and go, "Sorry, folks, our recording fucked up. We're now going to do an abbreviated summary of what happened in the previous session." And we could have bounced between us, going with me going, "Well, there's this scene," and then a couple of folks jumping in saying the things that they did that were key in those scenes, and then leading it up to the moment of that big mic drop reveal that was at the end of the episode, and then starting play the actual episode that we were recording at that time from that point.
I heard that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah,
Like
that's
when it
interesting.
happened. Sorry, it's just and I remember being like, "No, that's a bummer for them. That sucks."
Yeah, I guess that's a tricky thing with doing video, because we have had a couple of occasions like that on How We Roll, where someone's local recording has failed, and there hasn't been a backup in the cloud, and sometimes that means, it's like the death of the episode. But a couple of times the player in question has gone through and just basically tried to remember what it was they said and re-recorded that as their track. And then we've just edited it in so that you wouldn't know, listening to the final product, that their audio happened at a different time than everyone else's.
We just had on Beth May from Dungeons and Daddies. Sorry to shout him out again, but she was saying that happened with one of theirs, where one person's mic didn't get picked up, and they play in the same room like we do, and so they listened to everybody else's mics to pick up what he was saying off their mic, and then he went in and recorded it line for line, which is wild.
Yeah, but
I think we had a similar thing with the one time I've done stuff with How We Roll, which was my run of Amidst the Ancient Trees. Where I think the last episode, one person's audio was completely unsalvageable. So I don't know what happened to it in the end.
Yeah, well, in that case, I think it wasn't just one person. If I remember correctly, it was two people who'd lost their audio.
Oh, even better.
There. So they decided not to release that last episode, which is a real shame. So yeah, that is a lost episode.
They all lived happily ever after, even after the dynamite went off. Just saying.
Yeah.
It can be whatever you wanted it to be.
They all moved to a nice dynamite farm upstate.
I do remember someone making the comment in that episode, because I've still got my local recording for that, saying, like, "Holy shit, this was a consequence of a failed roll that was kind of way off the deep end, but you were fucking around with dynamite." So, hey.
But even beyond the editing, I think there are a lot of big differences between just the approach that we take in actual plays and home games. Now, we've talked about the difference with playing with professional actors and improvisers, and I mean, that obviously makes a huge difference. But even beyond that, even for those of us who've just come purely out of gaming rather than acting, there's still, I don't know about you two, but I'm always very conscious of, whenever I do an actual play, that it is a performance above all else. That, just because I've got a camera pointing in front of me, I'm speaking into a microphone, I know it's being recorded, it activates a different part of my brain than if I were playing a casual game. And then I'll do things subtly differently. I'll perhaps be a bit more of an instigator. I'll say more stuff explicitly in character. I'll try to find ways of picking up the pace. I'll spend less time talking about game mechanics and more stuff talking about the narrative. And all of these things make it, I think, a more a tighter, more dynamic experience than a home game would be, because there's a lot of fluff that goes into just casual gaming
All
that
right,
you
it's
really
been
don't
decided.
want to
Scott
listen
says
to.
that actual plays are better because you focus harder when you're playing in an actual play than your home game. Sorry, home
Yeah,
gamers, but
obviously, yes, yeah,
you
yeah.
got
That is exactly what I'm saying, Zach. Thank you for paraphrasing. Yes.
And at the other end of the bell curve, who's me, who's done it so many times now. I just go, fuck it. I'm just actually, as far as I'm concerned, it's just the folks on the screen in front of me. There's no one else watching it. I'm just going to treat them as though they're just round the table and play this as naturally as I can.
even if we're
So,
not
yeah.
playing a game, me and Thomas and Luke and Joe and Justin are performing for each other in our lives. We are
Yeah.
actively trying to make each other laugh at every moment that we are around each other. And we are just those kind of people. So I think our game didn't actually change really at all, except for putting in ads and talking to people who aren't in the room through the microphone and saying hey listener, that's the weird part. Is I remember the first time someone did that and me being like, oh, that's a thing we can do now. That's weird. We're talking to people who aren't here, and that's strange. But before that, I mean, we were in our home game around my kitchen table. We were performing the fuck out of whatever we were doing for each other. And that really all started because Joe Terry, who was one of our players, was a big Critical Role guy. So when he came in and joined our table, we'd already been playing for 6 months. And he joined our table. In the very first scene I introduced, he just jumped into character and talked to Taylor in character, and she was like, wait, what the fuck are we doing? I'm sorry, what? We didn't do this before.
Oh,
And that
nice.
changed our game entirely. Just having Joe do that made the rest of us all jump into character and start doing voices and carrying on full conversations and doing the whole rigmarole of being digging into the immersion of those role play scenes from a improv standpoint, I guess.
Yeah. Just as an aside, what you were talking about there with voices. Now, this is something that is on my mind an awful lot when I do these games, because I can't do accents to save my life. I've never been able to. I mean, put it in perspective. I'm half Scottish and I can't do a Scots accent. So, this is my
Oh,
ability
please
to do
try.
accents is non-existent. No, I will not. Uh, but I can do a bit of variation in my voice. I can change the register. I can embody characters in slightly different ways. But on the whole, my ability to differentiate between characters is very, very limited. And I see a lot of discussion online. I mean, this is, I think, part of the Matt Mercer effect in seeing people, people who have spent a lot of time watching and listening to actual plays that are done entirely by voice actors, and they expect people to be able to do this huge range of voices and to do everything in their character's voice and stuff like that. And I mean, as someone who can't do that, I'm here to say, I mean, that's really nice if you can do it, and by all means, please do it. But it's not the end of the world if you can't.
Absolutely. I mean, you are saying that you can't do voices, and yet you, on a very old episode of Good Friends of Jackson Elias, gave some of the best advice I've heard for voice acting in TTRPGs, which was get into the mindset of the character. Are they nervous? Are they excited? Get into their emotional feel and change your voice
Yeah.
based on that. And it doesn't have to be an accent or a voice, but it can be talking a little bit quicker or thinking or darting your eyes back and forth as you're speaking, which will
Yeah.
make you speak differently. There are little tips and tricks you can do without trying to be Kermit the Frog that will work out well for both you and your players.
I'm in a similar boat as Scott here. I can do emotion in my own voice, but if I try to do an accent, it is going to be a hate crime. So I steer away from that like the plague.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
go-to hate crime accent, Matt?
Any of them that ain't mine.
Oh, you can't do someone from Kent, or so, like there's that.
The police will come for me. I'm not going there.
Gross.
I, I mean, another big difference I've seen in the approach that people in actual plays take, and this is particularly in horror actual plays and particularly in one-shots, is, and this is something I always have to remind myself to take into account when I run things like convention games, because the kinds of people who play them are going to be very different, which is that the people in actual plays will embrace failure and disaster and chaos and try to instigate it in a way that most, I think, home groups won't. I'm not saying every home group plays to win, but I think that kind of headlong race towards disaster, death, and destruction is peculiar to actual plays. To the extent where it's become a bit of a cliche on a few of the games that I play, that people will be visibly disappointed when they pass SAN rolls, for example.
Oh, I get pissed.
Yeah.
I try to make my power as low as possible with every character I make.
Yeah, same.
But when I play with friends at my table in my home, which I play test the stuff I'm writing for friends that I know and who love role playing and have played D&D for years and were happy to jump into Delta Green with me. And I explained to them the very first time we played, I was like, this is not a game about winning. It's a game about dying or having your character be scarred emotionally and mentally forever. And the most fun we're going to have is describing your character dying or describing how the fallout in their family of their death, which seems crazy when you're saying it to people who haven't played, but it is really fun. And or we're going to be describing like your character going back home being a fucking menace for the reason of whatever the thing they picked up while they were out there. And so like if you prep them for that, like right off the bat, I think a lot of people are way more interested and willing to follow you. But again, like this goes back to I watched some of that Critical Role. I watched some Dimension 20 for the first time because I hadn't really given that its full due. Like I've listened to Brennan run games on audio podcasts, but I haven't heard or I haven't watched the Dimension 20 thing, which beautiful. What cool sets and gorgeous props they have. Like so much fun. And if I was still running a home game and not doing a podcast and had a real job, I would probably be pouring all of my extra income into just doing that for my friends because it looks awesome. But the one thing that I really noted was the amount of respect that Brennan holds as the GM of that table.
Yeah.
From people who desperately want to talk and get their joke in. And they are being kind to each other and him by not doing it and knowing when to do it because they're all professional improvisers. But the way that he wields power at that table is something that I think every GM should strive for because you can set a tone when you have that buy-in from your players, which is super important, but then you can back it up with being ready to tell them where they are, tell them, what's happening and describe it in enough detail to help get them immersed.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest skills that you can have as a GM, and this applies just as much to home games, is what you're talking about there, managing the spotlight, angling it around, seeing who is ready for their moment in the light, angling it around towards them, making sure that they'd had their glorious moment there, and then not letting that outstay its welcome, not letting them overshadow everyone else and swiveling it around to someone else.
Absolutely.
like you say about some people, kind of they get disappointed when they pass certain roles.
Oh yeah,
Regardless of whether it's an AP, regardless of whether I'm at the table, I just resign myself to the fact that I touch a dice and I'm going to fail the roll. And it's just, there's going to be those occasional moments of glory when it's, holy shit, I passed something. Yeah.
And it's not, you never roll low, you never roll high. It's always just failure, regardless of the game. Oh, okay.
It's regardless of, it's the least positive outcome for that dice.
So a craps table sees you coming and they all scatter.
Oh, there's a reason I go straight to the card table when I go to a casino. I don't go anywhere near craps.
But this is one of the reasons why I really like online dice rollers and role-playing games, because I'm sure most of them are really badly programmed, because my experience is they tend to be very, very swingy. They'll roll really high or really low, way more than physical dice will. And I've certainly been in some actual plays where those sudden shifts between, here's this really dangerous situation, you need to make a roll to ensure your survival. Fuck, I've rolled a 00. Everything is falling apart. I'm about to die. How about if I just try this one last ditch action to see whether I can get myself out of it? 0-1. And that's happened so many times in actual plays I've been involved with. And I'm sure people listening to them think that we're faking all that, but we're not. It genuinely happens. And that said, I won't mention which one, but I have been on an actual play where every now and then one of the players in particular wants to fudge dice rolls, generally because he's passed something and thinks it would be more entertaining if he failed. And so he'll just say, oh, yeah, can we just do that again? But, react as if I'd failed that roll. And so we'll do that.
What?
And, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And
believe nothing, listeners.
But I think that can make for a more entertaining listening experience, because sometimes you do want to hear the bad thing happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if it's me rolling, the bad thing will just happen anyway.
Yeah, that guy should just have Matt come in and roll for him.
Oh, I will bless his dice.
But one thing I will say in favor of learning from actual plays is that, as we said, there's a lot of different styles of actual play out there, but there are also lots of different systems that people play, and it's a really good way perhaps of learning a new system, or at least getting familiarity with it and finding an actual play of it, or even learning a scenario that you've read through and you want to see how it plays out. And if you can find the author running it or something like that, even better. But well, actually, I say even better. I know there are people out there who run my stuff a lot better than I do. But yeah, they can be great teaching tools. The one caveat I'd offer is that, I know for myself and a number of other GMs that I've played with, Jared Logan, for example, will simplify the rules and use house rules to try to keep the action moving, and not perhaps give the full didactic experience. If you're looking at this as a learning experience, you might be learning techniques for how to run a fast-paced, exciting version of this, but you're not going to learn the minutiae of how all the mechanics work.
That's the same thing as if you were role-playing pre-internet days and you happened upon the GM that you were going to play with who played like that. And that's how you learned how to play. And then you would learn how to play from a different GM, the next GM you played with. And now we just have the opportunity to learn from countless different styles and choose which one suits us best, which one we want to try to emulate. And of course, we're never going to do that because we're all different people and we're going to bring our own style to it. And whatever player table you have in front of you is going to change the vibe based on each of their individual play styles, and that all coalesces into one mixed bag of whatever the game becomes. And I think that that's like the fun of it. But you do need to all get on the same like wavelength ahead of time, at least about some stuff. I was going to bring up one story before we like finished up before Q&A time, but like I had a friend Jake, who came on our show and guested a few times early days, and we'd role played with him a few times. He ran PX Poker Night for us. That was the first time I played that scenario. Delightful time. And he was playing in a new group. I think they were playing D&D, and he was a player, and the GM was a big Critical Role fan. A critter, if you will, I learned today.
Right.
And he lamented to me after their first session that he was the last PC to be introduced in their first intro session, and it was an hour and a half before he was bringing his character to the game.
Woof.
And when I was watching some Critical Role stuff, I was skimming through the first episode of their third season, and I was like, shit, yeah, it is an hour 20 in until the final player comes on screen. And so that's a way that people are learning to do things. And if you have the buy-in from everyone and everyone wants to do that, that's one thing. But not telling people that you're going to do 30-minute scenes with each character at the beginning is pretty wild. So that's another session 0 thing to just talk about beforehand.
I'd say that's something that you're doing more for the audience than the players. And if you're running a home game where you don't have an audience, you don't necessarily want to put that much setup in there and have everyone else twiddling their thumbs. Yeah.
I wouldn't, but I also wouldn't do that on an actual play. So it is, it's just different styles across the board.
Yeah. On a related point to that, I think there are certain scenarios that lend themselves to actual plays, and then there's ones very much at the other end of the scale that do not. And thinking along similar lines of that example, there's one of the ones I can think of for Cult called, I think, Hell is Other People.
Oh, yeah.
That very much has that setup that it's one character's introduced, they have quite a session with the single GM, then another character enters the scene, and then there's a long section with them, and then there's another character that gets introduced. If you're the last one at the end of the list, you're going to be sitting around waiting for a while, and that is not a great position to be in for an actual play, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Ooh. Well, shall we jump into some questions from the audience? We've got one here from Crocheted Slayer 61. As someone who has never played a tabletop RPG and wants to do so, especially after listening to Pretending to Be People in some of Scott's work, what tips would you have for setting something up? I'd say this is a golden age for trying to get into role-playing, because there are all sorts of forums online now. Obviously, I'll plug the good friends of Jackson Elias Discord server, but other Discord servers are available, and there are other communities where people will come together and offer games. Now, the magic phrase to look out for is LFG, looking for group. And if you can find an LFG channel or forum,
let's fucking go.
Yeah, that's what it really stands for. Yeah.
I thought it was local friendly game store, but
or just local friendly game. Yes. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the best way. One thing I'd suggest is that you make it very clear to people that this is your first experience of role playing, because they'll probably go out of your way then. Oh, sorry, they'll probably go out of their way then to make it a friendly, welcoming experience for you, and to perhaps spend a bit more time explaining how certain things work. So yeah, I'd absolutely recommend that. And as I said at the start of the episode, there is no substitute for actually doing. The best way of getting into this is by finding a game like that and just jumping in.
Absolutely, yeah. When I started running games, it was just run as much as I can. I was writing a homebrew campaign as I was running for 3 different groups. One group became Pretending to Be People. one group was video game players, like more so than the boys that I ended up with at PTBP, and they were like trying to gamify everything. And so I tended to like turn the style of my GMing more toward that style, but I didn't like it that much. And so that group fizzled out. And then another group didn't want to interact with the dice at all and just wanted to talk about non-game related things. And you can imagine that that group didn't last long either.
I mean, sometimes a group like that can stay together as a group of friends. And
Absolutely.
perhaps you just want to sit around and have some beers together and just chat. But yeah, it's probably not going to survive as a gaming group.
Yeah, those all started as friend groups, still are, but not gaming groups.
Yeah. How about you, Matt? Any advice?
Yeah, I think I'd also come at it maybe from a different angle, that don't just solely think, oh, I want to set up an actual play and that's the end of it.
Well, I don't
Be-
think this is an actual play. I think they just want to get into role playing. Full stop.
Ah, right. I read it more that it was that setting up my actual play group or playing online.
No,
I
I don't think so.
I think it may still apply then. Go onto Google, type in conventions, gaming conventions, find out where the nearest one to you is, when it's held, see if you can make the time in your calendar to go and do it, and have no fear about just turning up on the day and trying to get yourself into a sign up into a game and see how it runs in meat space. And you'll find it is a very different experience to running stuff online, but you'll find which style you like the more, what you can take from one to the other, and give you just a whole more rounded experience. And yeah, again, just wholehearted, just go out and do it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because I know I'd assumed for a long time that people who were going to conventions would probably be experienced gamers. But more than once, I've had the experience of running a game at a convention and having someone pop up and sort of say, "Oh, yeah, this is the first RPG I've played." And which was delightful. I was really glad to help welcome them into the hobby.
You didn't scare
But
them off.
no, surprisingly, I must have been off my game.
No, they just have good taste.
Oh, and we have a question from from Miranda, who says, I see a lot of people saying they want to start playing, but want to play a game first to learn and then struggle to find a group. What recommendations would you have for someone who wants to play, who doesn't feel ready or have the confidence to start a game? Yeah, I think that's a subtly different question. The confidence part of it, I, as with everything, I think confidence comes from doing. Yeah, I think you've got to kind of get over that hurdle. I I mean, this is why I was so glad that I started role playing when I did, when there wasn't anyone telling me how difficult it was or how much prep I had to do, when I could just blunder into it, make mistakes, and learn that way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that now. If you're seeing all this stuff that's intimidating you, if you feel like you don't have the confidence to start a game, do it anyway. The worst you're going to do is run a shit game or play in a shitty game. And I mean that is a temporary thing. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We've all done it at some stage. And one thing I say is that no amount of preparation, no amount of doing all your research first is going to prevent you from either playing in or running a shit game. It's going to happen anyway. So you're always going to have bad gaming experiences. You're always going to have good ones. Fundamentally, just do it.
Nike.
And on that, I'd offer that the best two words in this situation are one shots. Don't think you have to jump in and start with running a campaign. Start small and work up. So yeah, play those single session games to say, is this a game that you think you're interested in? But when you actually get to play it, you think, my God, the mechanics in this thing suck donkey dick for no fun and no profit, and that you just don't get on with it. play something, dabble with different systems, dabble with different scenarios until you find what you like, and then start to focus your efforts in and then invest more time, invest more effort, and then pursue that one thing you like.
I don't think I've ever encountered a game where the resolution mechanic is sucking donkey dick. Is that a fatal variant?
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, yeah, you obviously haven't played Fatal. Yeah.
Scott, the Zoom call fucked up a little bit, and so you went. I don't think I've ever played a game where the mechanic was sucking donkey dick.
Brilliant. Oh,
Woo!
like Zoom has a better sense of comedic timing than I have.
That would be a great custom skill, though, in Unknown Armies. Just saying.
Yeah, I actually, backing up a bit before the donkey dick stuff.
Sure.
This did put me in mind of something else that was on my mind when I was preparing for this, which is I've seen a number of posts, particularly on the Call of Cthulhu subreddit recently, which I had a really kind of visceral disagreement with, which was it's a kind of post we get fairly regularly on, I think, just any RPG forum, and particularly in this case, Call of Cthulhu, where someone's saying, "Hey, I've had this idea for a Call of Cthulhu scenario that I want to run. Perhaps it's not even a Cthulhu myth or something scenario or something. Maybe I've been playing a lot of Resident Evil. I want to run a Resident Evil game in Call of Cthulhu, and I've had these ideas and so on. I've never played Call of Cthulhu before, but yeah, I want to give all this a try." And you will get dozens of posts sort of saying, well, no, you shouldn't just write your own material. You should start off by running pre-written scenarios so you can see how it all works and learn how to do this properly before you write anything of your own.
Boo.
And I mean, yeah, I mean, Jesus, if I'd started out with that attitude, I'd never have written a fucking thing. Yeah. Again, yeah, I think there is a lot to be said for the joyous ignorance of what you can't or shouldn't do, and just going ahead and doing it anyway.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean there were so many things that I did at the very beginning that I wouldn't do now, but I'm glad I did then. Like for instance, the very first scenario that I wrote, I started with a map, and the map had specific places on it where the things they needed to find were, and if they didn't look in those places, they weren't going to find them. And each one was an audio note that was like on my phone that I would play live in the room that was numbered, and so they knew like, oh, okay, they're numbered. We need to find. Oh, we found 4 and 2, so we know there's 3 and 1 out there somewhere, sort of thing. And now I think I would approach that differently and just say like, okay, well, wherever they look, they're going to find these things like in the order I want them to be found. But at the time, it was very fun and interesting, and they were freaking out and I was freaking out, and it was super fun. And you learn from those things and move forward. But like not starting because you're nervous makes all the sense in the world. We're all socially weird creatures who live inside of our own worlds, and it's the only reality that actually exists. But you feel free to spread out those elbows and get out of your comfort zone, because that's where life is. And being able to be silly and make a fool out of yourself is going to translate to other parts of your life beyond role playing that will strengthen you as a person, like from the inside.
I do remember hearing some saying ages ago, which has stuck with me. I mean, it's probably quite a well-known one, but it's one that I internalized hard, which is an expert is someone who has made every possible mistake in the field.
Yes. Yep. Love that. So get out there and make some mistakes. Get messy. Miss Frizzle. You remember. Write your own Magic School Bus campaign.
This is where the two Brits in the call just look at you blankly.
Oh, sorry. Miss Frizzle was a red-haired, rambunctious elementary school teacher who took her children on field trips with magic. Like when they were studying anatomy, they all got in the magic school bus, which then shrunk down to the size of a white blood cell so that they could put it inside one of the other students' bodies and travel through it. And it wasn't weird. It was only educational and nice.
It's fantastic voyage without Donald Pleasance.
No, he's in it.
Oh.
Right. Couple more questions. Well, first one. Another one from Miranda here. For folks who were first introduced to role playing through actual plays and want to start playing, what pitfalls or bad habits should they avoid?
Saying like and subscribe too much at the table that's not being recorded.
Yeah, don't plug your Patreon to the other plays.
No, this will be on you guys because I've realized my whole stance is that I'm all on board with learning from actual plays. It's what brought me here, and I think that as long as you are aware of some of the pitfalls, like the expectations, the not understanding the editing is part of it, and being able to have those moments at your table where you're out of character, out of, you know, even the game itself, and not being in your head like, well, they wouldn't do this on my favorite show. And so like that will sour your experience, and it's a choice that you personally can make to not have that sour your experience.
I think from my end, it would definitely be don't afraid to ask if you've got any queries or if you want to understand how a rule works, because all that stuff, if it did happen at an actual play, has probably been snipped if it is one of those ones that's heavily edited.
Yep.
So you can ask questions. You're not expected to know the rule book chapter and verse. So your GM is there to help you and facilitate you having fun. Make use of them. You do not need to, there is no exam at the end of this. You do not need to know exactly how this rule works from this page or this context or anything like that. Ask questions if you need to.
One that I'd suggest, which may be a bit less obvious, is that actual play, I mean, for all I said about the increased pace potentially of actual play podcasts, I think actual play players tend to be very much more verbose and confrontational and pushy than people in tabletop games generally are. And I mean, that can be a lot of fun if everyone is on the same page, if everyone is used to that. If everyone is a more sedate kind of player and you're the one person in there taking all the spotlight time, you know, throwing grenades into, you know, every narrative point in the game and shaking things up and pushing things to confrontation, and everyone else is just, you know, cautiously going around exploring the dungeon, then I don't think anyone's going to thank you too much. So basically, I'd say temper your play style, or at least adjust your play style to the play style of the group. You don't have to be performing if no one else is. You know, very out of character play. Perhaps you can try to, you know, bring in some more role playing, talk to them more in character, see whether you can bring that out. But if everyone else is pushing back against that and doesn't like it, then don't.
Yeah, and find people who jive with you. I think whether it's, you know, Discord buddies or people IRL, even if they don't game and you're interested in getting into it, start putting out feelers. Start pushing them towards resources that would maybe make them interested in RPGs. And if it clicks, then you've got a built-in group that already understands each other's sort of social contract with each other. There are jokes that I can make to like one of my friends that I'm not going to make to another one of my friends. And we have a relationship where that is an okay joke to make. and we have a relationship where that would be a weird joke to make. Like there are little things that add to the game because you already know each other. And then if that's not the case, if you don't have people in your life who are interested in this world, finding people with a similar sensibility is what the goal is. So if you listen to Good Friends of Jackson Elias, you're going to find people on their Discord server who also listen to Good Friends of Jackson Elias and are probably more likely to play in a way that you would be into if you also like what these dudes say all the time. If you listen to Pretending to Be People and you go on our Discord server, you're going to find some verified freaks who are having a very good time running games. And we welcome new players on the server. Again, let's fucking go. Looking for game is actually what it is. And so like we have a whole server for that. You can find people to play with. If it's your first time, people will be happy to walk you through it. And that's just like this, it goes for everything. If you're into a different show or whatever, reach out to their subreddit or their Discord or wherever the community is, and see if you can drum up a game that way. Because wherever you have common interests already, that can help build those immediate connections needed to build a game on top of. And that's all I'll say about that.
I think we've got an awful lot of people on the Good Friends Discord server who I think we've got an awful lot of people on the Good Friends Discord server who are surprised when they find out there's a podcast.
I thought it. You said it. Yeah.
Right. We have a couple more questions, and I think we've got time to tackle them. We got one here from Whistler, who maybe Bikes and Bukes, but we're not quite sure. We need to know who is more compulsively addicted to editing, Scott, Zach, or Cuppy Cup.
Yes.
I'm glad we caught you on the format there.
That's good. I don't know.
I don't think there's any competition. I don't think there's any competition here. It's Cup. It is absolutely 100% Cup. I remember him talking about what went into their Blade Runner campaign, because he edited the whole thing up like an audio drama. He got people to come in and revoice NPCs, voice actors to revoice NPCs so they had distinct voices. He did custom music for some of it. He raided his sound effects library and found just the perfect sound effects and really polished the audio quality. I think he said it was something like 40 hours editing per hour of finished audio.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah. I mean, I'll spend about 8 hours editing an episode of The Good Friends, maybe.
I try to do
puts it in perspective.
Yeah. I try to do like an hour. Oh, yeah. An hour for every 5 minutes of raw audio is like sometimes what I'm working with on my end. But that's a lot more with the 40, but that's a whole other medium that he's diving into at that. That's intense. My like experience with editing comes from when I was growing up. My dad was a music director of a church, and they were given the music department specifically was given a endowment by a member that was only supposed to be used for the music department. They wanted us to build a recording studio in the church with their money. And so we did. And then I became like the guy behind the booth. Like I was engineering for the church bands, and I was engineering for local bands that I was friends with and bringing them in. And then I got fully obsessed with editing audio, and like to the point to where I wasn't like eating, and my mom would be we lived in the
Wow.
parsonage across the street, and she would like run over to the studio and like drag me out of there for dinner. And it was an awesome time. Like I get really obsessed with stuff when I get into it, and so I was fully in, and I was doing that like up until I started role playing. And so then when we finally decided to start recording, I was like, yeah, now I get to do my audio editing again. Yeah, and it made me really happy. But sometimes I will just be just a little too stoned and realize that I've been working on the same 30 seconds for like 30 minutes and be like, oh, you got to get out of here, brother. You made it sound worse.
Yeah, I'd never done any audio work before taking over the editing of The Good Friends, and I found it a bit tricky at first, but honestly, that's because I was using Audacity, and no one should fucking use Audacity. No one.
That's what I use.
know. Zach. No,
I feel called out. Guess what program I'm using to record my local audio track?
I mean,
The one you recommended to me.
Recording's one thing for sure.
Using it to record your audio is fine. Using it as an audio editor, Zach.
Yeah, no, I know.
Oh,
I learned
God.
on Pro Tools, and here I am.
Fucking hell. After this is over, we're going to have an intervention, and I am going to introduce you to our Lord and Savior Reaper.
Which sounds like something you would say while running a game.
Yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, I mean, once I switched from Audacity to Reaper, I started enjoying the experience a lot more. And now I find it really quite therapeutic. There's something about just losing myself in the mechanical aspect of doing the editing that, yeah, I find relaxing.
Oh, dude, once you get in that flow state, it's
Yeah.
just perfect and beautiful.
Yeah, and if it's a good episode as well, you can have fun going back and listening to it again and laughing at all the bits that, yeah, that really worked and getting rid of the stuff that didn't.
Which is delightful. Much power.
Yeah.
I just edited and we put out a 3-part run of Delta Green's 2017 shotgun scenario, Operation Stop Repo by Ellendale 004, with Jared Logan as a guest player. But we recorded it in January, so I didn't remember anything that we did, and it was delightful getting to edit something that I had no memory.
Yeah. Right, I think we're almost at time, but before we go to the wrap-ups and so on, let's just finish this bit off by after all the caveats and so on that we put in about learning from actual plays, what would you say are the big advantages for a new role player to listen to actual plays and learn stuff from them?
Matt,
Okay, I was going to defer to.
I think it's
defer to
hilarious
yourself,
to
but
have you start.
I think the first thing for me then is going to be tied back to one of the points I made earlier, that if it's a game that you want to explore and want to see is it a game system that you would get on with, seeing how it runs at a table, even if it's a virtual, very heavily edited Adobe Premiere table, at least you get an idea of how it works in an actual situation. So, for instance, seeing how does Vason work? The thing that people won't tell you is those sixes just disappear off the d6s that you have when you play this thing in the physical world. But seeing how it works, seeing how easy intuitive it works, and yeah, just generally the vibes of the kind of stories you can tell within that system. Compare that to, well, I've tried this game. I want to see how another Year Zero engine works. Let's try Blade Runner. Oh, hang on a minute. This is quite different. So yeah, you can use it as a good to dip your toe in to see if it's something that you have an immediate visceral reaction to, that you think, oh yeah, this is something I would like to know more of. Or hell no, keep me the hell away from this thing.
How about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you are wanting to GM, then listen to various actual plays, different GMs running different games, or if you're just focused in on one game, but you can still learn stuff from listening to someone run a different game, and you'll invariably learn stuff from listening to someone GM any game. But if you are listening in for that, pay attention to how they set a scene. Pay attention to how they run a combat. After they say, okay, you took 7 hit points of damage, the conversation doesn't end there. If you're listening to a good actual play, typically they describe what happened instead of just saying, oh, you lose this many hit points and the turn goes on. You want to mimic the things that you enjoy about that game and, bring it into yourself. If you're a player, I think you have, honestly, maybe even more to learn, because playing for me is more difficult, I think, than GMing. Mostly because I like talking so much and I have to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
But
I feel that. I feel that.
But also, like, knowing when to interact with the story that's being brought to you, and how to interact with it versus your character motivations, and how to wind those two together, because excellent players will be able to interact with the story at hand while also telling a secondary story, and that's really impressive. And like we were saying earlier, feels like a magic trick. But if you're watching a movie about aliens, it's never totally about aliens, right? There's a divorce plot typically, or a kid plot, or whatever it is you have going on, and letting those things come into your actual play table, I think or your table at home is going to be beneficial to you. I also look at every single movie and TV show as potential inspiration, constantly. I'm just like, any book I'm reading, everything comes out in the role playing at some point.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Everything is fodder. Kind of building a bit on what you both said there as well. I mean, on the Good Friends, we've done, the best part of 400 episodes now, and talking about different aspects of role playing and giving advice and throwing ideas out there. And there are any number of blogs and other podcasts that do that. The Miskatonic University podcast, or Seth Skorkowski's channel, and all these people giving you advice or giving you possible techniques that you can use. But fundamentally, there's a difference between being told those things in theory and seeing or hearing them in action. And it may not click entirely with you how that works if you're a certain kind of learner like myself, who learns best from example rather than just being told. And so, I think that is the one big strength of actual plays in that respect, in that, you can see what happens, with all these ideas when they hit a real game, or at least something approximating a real game. Right. Well, I think it is time for the wrap up. But before we go to the wrap up, Zach, for any. Hang on. No, let's say that again. That's the intro. Scott.
We're on a podcast, so he can rock this back. No worries.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like people are watching this shit live. Oh, God. Let me try that again. So, Zach, before we go to the wrap up, is there anything that you've been working on recently or have coming out at the moment that people should know about?
Yes. For those of you watching live, we just recently, like I said before, finished up season 2 of Pretending to Be People, which is a homebrew, quote unquote, Delta Green actual play. They don't actually play Delta Green agents in either season, but Delta Green is an agency, whether it's called that or not, in both seasons that they have to deal with. So that season 1 is 113 episodes. Season 2 is 95 episodes. If you need a backlog to get through on a road trip, come on down. We also have a bunch of one-shots that you can listen to of us playing actual Delta Green scenarios, or having Scott come on and run scenarios that he wrote for Call of Cthulhu and Pulp Cthulhu. Currently, post season 2, we just finished up a 3-episode run with Jared Logan as a guest PC, where we were running that Delta Green shotgun scenario winner. Next up is a 1-shot with Beth May from Dungeons and Daddies. After that is a 3-episode run with Ross Bryant, where we're playing a game that I homebrewed called Mission Unnatural, where we kind of ape the Mission Impossible situation with Delta Green, and I added in Pulp Cthulhu rules on top of Delta Green, and it made for a wild time of what happens when everyone succeeds on every roll. It's a great fucking game. We had so much fun. Ross is an insane improviser. What a guy. Like, wild. After that, we've got a game with Caleb Stokes, one of the writers of Delta Green, came into our studio and ran a game for us in person because we're all from Missouri. And so he was able to hang out IRL. And for those of you listening to, so check out all that. We'll have some more one-shots and stuff coming out before season 3 starts with more guests and more Scott, assuredly. And then we've got... yes, for those of you listening to the podcast, this Friday will be our first ever live show. And I'm not scared. You're scared of how fun it'll be. And it'll be at Gen Con 2026 on Friday at 4 p.m. There are fewer than 100 tickets left. So if you want to join us, go ahead and hop on down and hang out in Indianapolis. We're going to do some PTBP meetups and stuff and hang out at the zoo on was that Thursday? And yeah, you know, we're having a good time over at PTBP. So come check us out if you're into that sort of shit. I edit the fuck out of the podcast. Hopefully you can't tell. And it's a great time.
Fantastic. Then, yeah, I'll link to that in the show notes as well. So check those out at blasphemoustomes.com. Right. Well, you've been listening to the good friends of Jackson Elias. And until next time, it's a cheerio from me.
A donkey duck sucking duck. Oh, a donkey dick sucking farewell. Nope, you say farewell. A donkey dick sucking goodbye from me.
And a farewell from me with
that
100%
is staying
less
completely
donkey dick.
unedited. Oh, God.